Hello and welcome to Across Louisiana. My name is Steve Sawyer, your host for the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. We've got a really interesting show lined up for you. Jim Pittman is here, and Jim is with the Smoking Cessation Trust. And if you're someone who's wanting to quit smoking, this is the way you go about doing that. He's got information on all the facts and figures that you need to help stop smoking. John Lawrence is the Director of Museum Programs at the Historic New Orleans Collection. Just a fascinating man. He's been with the Historic New Orleans Collection for over 40 years. Jennifer Roberts is with YouthShift. She's going to be talking about that program. Alexis Baldera, she is a conservation biologist and a co-author, and she's with Ocean Conservancy, and she's going to be talking about 5 years after the BP oil spill. And finally, Mary Jacob. Mary is the Executive Director for the Families Helping Families of Jefferson. It's a statewide organization. Again, great show lined up. Thank you so much for being with us. We've got a few messages, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to Across Louisiana again. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Our first guest, this is just a fascinating topic. Mr. Jim Pittman, he is the Community Outreach Advisor for the Smoking Cessation Trust. And we had an opportunity to talk before the show here. And I mean, this is fascinating stuff right here. If you will, just real briefly, talk about the mission of the trust and what you're all about. Then I want to get into how people can take advantage of this.
Absolutely. The trust is a result of a class action lawsuit between the Scott class, which is a group of people throughout the state of Louisiana, and the American Tobacco Company, the tobacco industry. As a result of this class action lawsuit that was, say, settled in 2011, the Smoking Cessation Trust was born, and this organization was established to help people in Louisiana that qualify for the Scott class. That means they started smoking before September 1st, 1988, to quit smoking. So included in the program, if you become a member, if you're a resident of the state of Louisiana, you started smoking before September 1st, 1988, you are eligible for free counseling, individual and group therapy, telephone counseling, prescription medications, which if anybody has priced prescription medications to help quit, such as products such as Shantax and others, it can be extremely expensive to pay for on your own. Members
but through the trust, it's
but through
free?
the trust, through members with your ID card, it's free. And so are things such as nicotine replacement therapy. Those are the gums, patches, things that people use to kind of help them to quit. So it's a wonderful program. We now have 43,000 members. We started enrolling in 2012. And over the last couple of years, we've been averaging about 1,500 new enrollments per month, new applications per month. So it's a wonderful program.
I think this is incredible because we all know New Year's is coming up, and New Year's resolutions, you know, always one that's out there is I'm going to stop smoking, and what better way to stop? I want to give the website, Jim. It's www.smokefreela.org.
That's correct.
You said key words there like member. So, I mean, this website can tell you how you can become a member?
Absolutely.
Because you can't take advantage of this unless you're a member, right?
Absolutely, and it's very simple to join. All you need to do is go to that website or call one of our phone numbers, and I'll give that out in a little bit. Go to that website, that's smokefreela.org, sign up.
We'll put the number on the screen.
It takes 2 to 3 minutes. All you have to do is say, whether or not you're a resident of the state of Louisiana, and whether or not you started smoking before September 1st, 1988, which would
But you don't have to be a resident before that date, do you?
No, you just need to be a resident now.
Okay.
And started smoking before September 1st, 1988, and then within really, a few days, you'll get an ID card, similar to like a health plan type ID card that says you're a member. And with that card, you're eligible for all the free services and programs to help you quit. And the Smoking Cessation Trust partners with healthcare providers throughout the state of Louisiana to help people. Providers such as the Oxnard Health System, West Jefferson Medical Center, the Cardiovascular Institute of the South, and the list goes on and on. So if you go to that website, you'll see all the providers.
And they're wrapping me up now. But again, we urge people to go to the website. For those that want to quit smoking, I mean, what better way to stop than something like this. So again, I really thank you for coming on the show. This is great information as we come into that holiday season and New Year's resolutions and things like that. So Jim, thank you for being here. Please continue to come back on the show and update us with more information. We've got a few more guests. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Across Louisiana. Again, we thank you so much for being a part of the program. Just we love having the New Orleans collection folks on the show, and we've always just fascinating information that we learn when we have it when we have the guest on the show. And John Lawrence, who is the director of museum programs for the Historic New Orleans Collection, just thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
It's our pleasure.
We were chatting earlier. You've been with the organization for 40 plus years now?
Just over 40, yes.
That's incredible. So you're a part of the collection as much as the collection
I feel
is,
like
so
I
to
have
speak.
my own history there, yes.
That's kind of what I was getting to in a nice way. John, just, God, we just love having the Historic New Orleans Collection on because you guys always just got some of the most fascinating stuff going on. Again, just real briefly, tell us what the mission of the Historic New Orleans Collection is all about, because you're not a government agency or anything like that, right?
No, the Historic New Orleans Collection is funded principally by the Kemper and Leila Williams Foundation,
Okay.
a private foundation, and our role is really to collect, preserve, present elements that tell the story of Louisiana's history with the focus on New Orleans, but in earlier days when Louisiana was a colony, it was a much larger area than the modern state. And so we go up the Mississippi Valley and some of our collections are over across the Gulf on some of our holdings. So it's Louisiana, but in a very broad sense.
How far back do some of the collections go?
Our earliest item that I can recall off the top of my head is a 1513 printed map of the New World, which shows the Gulf of Mexico, it shows the Florida Peninsula, and not very much else that's recognizable.
That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. And as far as research goes, I mean, and I was asking you earlier, are you a library or a museum? And you're a little bit of both of things like that, because I know we've had people that have come in and talked about the research you can do there. Just you can't really take things away from the collection. You can do research, and you've got people there to assist and
Correct.
so forth.
We are not a lending library, but we are open to the public without charge for people to come in, and if they're researching, say, their family history or the house they live in or the part of town where they grew up, we can offer all kinds of materials from microfilms to maps to books to photographs for them to really look into that in great depth.
And you always have great exhibits, which you have one going on right now.
Yes, our exhibition in the Williams Gallery at 533 Royal Street is called An Architect and His City, Henry Howard's New Orleans. And Henry Howard is, well, we hope now, a better known architect than he has been for a number of years. He created some great works, and earlier this year we published a large book with Princeton Architectural Press about the imprint that he left on the South, especially in Louisiana. And this exhibition is not so much about that work in the narrow sense, but about the New Orleans that Howard lived in when he arrived in 1837 and when he died in 1884.
And did he build buildings in New Orleans area?
Yes, Howard designed over the course of that career over 250 buildings. Some of them are gone, some are well known, some are obscure, but some of the better known buildings that come from his mind are the Pontalba buildings, the Short Villa, which a lot of people know as the Cornstalk Fence House in the Gordon District, Maidwood Plantation, Nottoway Plantation. Those are examples of his work that kind of have left their mark on this
And John,
area.
is it free and open to the public?
Our exhibit is free of charge. Our hours are Tuesday through Saturdays, 9:30 till 4:30, and on Sunday from 10:30 to 4:30.
And your website is www.hnoc.org, and they're telling me I've got to wrap it up real quick. So all the information can be found on the website about the New Orleans collection, the exhibit, and so forth.
Yes, and you can even do some research online.
Wow. John, thank you guys so much for being on the show. We always love it when you come on the show. Happy holidays to you. We've got a couple more guests. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Across Louisiana. Again, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Our next guest is Jennifer Roberts. Jennifer is the Vice President of Education for Baptist Community Ministries and New Orleans YouthShift program. Jennifer, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, let's talk about YouthShift for a little bit, if you can. Give us the mission of the organization, what you focused on and things like that.
Sure. So YouthShift is actually a collection of organizations in the new nonprofit space in New Orleans. YouthShift is really around building a collaborative cross-system, meaning cross-city, to get under organizations in particular that focus on children and youth to kind of come together under a common vision and strategy. And then from that common vision and strategy, really come together around determining some strategies to work on together so that outcomes for children and youth can get better.
Now, are you focused just in the New Orleans area or the Metro New Orleans region? Or?
I think at the end of the day, the challenges that New Orleans children face are often similar in Jefferson Parish or in Tangipahoa or down into St. Tammany or, any of them. And so while it is a specific to Orleans Parish kind of initiative, I do think, in fact, that a lot of organizations who are in the outlying areas are both headquartered in New Orleans, but also serving populations outside of our parish.
Okay, so talk about some of the events and things that you guys are involved in.
So I think it's really about a process and a product. New Orleans YouthShift really started back in 2011 with a group of organizations who worked with children and youth, kind of struggling around how do we do our work better? How do we come together? How do we not only come together, but how do we plan together? How do we ensure we really understand what each other's are doing? Because at the end of the day, a lot of our young people in New Orleans are being served by multiple organizations. And by de facto, essentially, those families are in fact being served by multiple organizations. So back in 2011, you had a small group of organizations pledge to kind of do business differently. Particularly in a post-Katrina environment, you have a lot of organizations that have tried to work together. Some have done so really successfully, some have not. And in the nonprofit space, especially as funding has kind of dried up, just generally, meaning public funding, private philanthropic funding, just wherever the funding's coming from, they are subsequently having to get better about the way that they do business, because at the end of the day, the needs of the children and the community are just as great. And so some of the events that we're doing is we've actually been planning for about 2 years now. A number of organizations have come together, actually over 190 to date. Wow. So we actually had to map how many nonprofits we had in the New Orleans area, focusing on children and youth, but then under that, understand what are they doing, where are they getting their funding, who are the target populations that they serve. And then from there, figure out, is there a way for all of these nonprofits in New Orleans to actually come together under this common vision and strategy, and from there make some big decisions about what do they want to focus on and tackle together that would really improve outcomes for children and youth.
And your website is NOLA-YouthShift.org. We'll put that on the screen. All the information about YouthShift can be found on that website.
Right, and actually December 15th, we launched a call for connection, which is really the next stage of the work. It's about bringing together not just the 190 organizations in the community who have kind of already pledged on to doing business differently, but actually trying to reach the upwards of 400 organizations in the community that focus on children and youth. Some Orleans Parish, some are regional, but obviously we would love to see more organizations involved and really committing to one of the 5 tenets that they'll be presenting on the 15th.
Yeah, Jennifer, that is great information. Thank you so much for being on the show. Happy holidays to you.
Same to you.
Again, thank you for what you guys are doing. We have a couple more guests. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Across Louisiana. Again, thank you as always for being a part of the show. Very happy to have our first guest, Alexis Baldera. Alexis is conservation biologist and an author, co-author with the Ocean Conservancy. Alexis, thank you so much for taking time to be on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Hey, first time to be on the show. I mean, just fascinating about what you guys do, and we'll get into all that. But if you can, just kind of summarize the mission of the organization and some of the things you focus on and so forth.
Sure, yeah. So I work at Ocean Conservancy, and we're a nonprofit organization. We work all around the country, from the Arctic to the Gulf of Mexico, on issues from fisheries management to reducing trash in the ocean. And I'm part of our Gulf Restoration Program, which is focused specifically on restoring the Gulf from the BP oil disaster. And so I've been part of the program for 5 years now, and we focused on comprehensive restoration. So restoration of the whole Gulf, from the shore to the offshore, and then really focusing on long-term monitoring and research.
Oh, now, are you from this area, or is the spill what brought you here? Or
I'm not originally from the Gulf area. I'm from Minnesota originally, but my family's been in the South for the past 16 years.
Okay.
So the spill did bring me to this job, because our program, we've worked in the Gulf for decades on fisheries restoration and management. But when the oil spill happened, we have a new program that is focused specifically on that.
Okay, and talk about the programs and the things you're involved in.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a biologist at Ocean Conservancy, and one project I've been working on for the last couple years with my co-author Matt Love and some of the other members of our science team is creating this report. It's called Charting the Gulf, Analyzing Gaps in Long-Term Monitoring of the Gulf of Mexico. So this effort, we've created an inventory of all the monitoring that's happening in the Gulf and then looked for gaps. And so we also identified priorities. So with this restoration money coming to the Gulf, we're going to be spending a lot of money on restoration and understanding how we're doing in terms of meeting recovery. And so we've taken this inventory and used it to kind of create a baseline of all the information that's already being generated. Can we leverage that to increase our understanding of the Gulf of Mexico? And can we use some of that restoration efforts to fill gaps in understanding and start learning more about these different ecosystems and habitats and how projects are performing?
And where would a report like this, where would this be published, or what's the ultimate goal of the report?
So the ultimate goal is to get the attention of restoration managers, the Restore Council, the NERDA trustees, and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And if folks are interested in learning more about Ocean Conservancy or downloading our report, they can go to our website. It's oceanconservancy.org.
And we'll put that on the screen.
Okay. Sounds good.
And then does the organization, I mean, do you take volunteers? Do you need volunteers to do anything to help assist with what you're doing? Or
we do use volunteers. We have volunteers. Sometimes we have an annual event called the International Coastal Cleanup, and we have volunteers from all over the world who participate in that event. And so if folks are interested, again, they can go to our website, and we have a link on there for the International Coastal Cleanup.
Do you know when that
Festival.
comes up again by chance?
I think September. I'm not sure if 2016 is going to be September.
Yeah,
again.
we'd love to have you come
It's in
back on the show if you could and talk more about that. I think that's fascinating.
We would love
to. Where are we now compared, of course, to when it happened? It was a disaster. So 5 years later, can you talk about, I mean, where is the Gulf now?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so 5 years later, the NERDA trustees recently published their draft programmatic damage assessment and restoration plan. Long name, but in that plan, it outlines the injury to the Gulf of Mexico, and so they detailed some extensive injuries. Up until now, you would be kind of been piecing together information from the scientific literature and in individual reports, but the numbers in there are staggering, like hundreds of thousands of turtles and birds were killed. Dolphins in Barataria Bay, we've heard about dolphins dying, and so they have actual numbers. So the populations in Barataria Bay and Mississippi Sound are projected to decline by half.
Yeah, wow.
And in this, it's staggering. So in the report, they also lay out their plan for restoration. So what are some of the approaches they'll take for these injuries to the oil spill?
That's great information. Again, they're wrapping me up. I'd love to have you come back on the show, keep us updated on where we're at. Nothing, I mean, is more important to the Gulf Coast as the spill was and where we're at right now. So I really thank you for taking time to come on the show. We look forward to the report coming out. We have one more guest. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Across Louisiana. Again, appreciate you being with us today. Our final guest is Mary Jacob. Mary is the Executive Director for Families Helping Families of Jefferson. Mary, thank you so much for being on the show. Greatly appreciate having you here.
Thanks for inviting me.
And I want to ask, with the title of Families Helping Families of Jefferson, does that mean you just work in Jefferson Parish, or are you focused more in the Metro New Orleans area? Or
we actually provide support and services throughout the state of Louisiana. Our office is physically located in Jefferson Parish.
Okay, so Jefferson Parish, St. Charles Parish, St. Bernard, all that's is good
Correct.
to go. Okay. And your website is FHFJefferson.org. I screwed that up, but we'll put that on the screen. All the information about how to seek help and information is on the website?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the mission of the organization and some of the programs you're involved in and things like that.
Okay, the mission is to provide support to families that have children with disabilities or adults themselves with disabilities.
Okay.
And by supports, we mean how do you navigate your daily life, whether you have a child with a disability or you're an adult with a disability. A lot of times, babies are born with disabilities, and a parent is brand new to that. They've never had any experience with that. They don't even, they don't have a family member or any previous background in disabilities, or somebody might have an accident and then become disabled. So if they don't know where to go, they can come to us, and we kind of navigate them through all the service systems that are out there. First one being education if it's a child, because even if they're infants, they need to be connected to early steps for early intervention services, and then into the school system to make sure if they need special education services, they're getting adequate education and what's appropriate for the child and the child's needs, because they're very specific for different disabilities and different children. And then as adults, and then as these children age and go into the adult world, most of them still want to work. They want to live independently. They want the same things everybody else wants, no matter if they have a developmental disability or not. They still want to have a life outside of their home. So we try to connect them and make sure that they have the ability to do those type of things. And the services that are out there, we don't provide direct services, but we try to connect them to the people that do provide those direct services.
And so if I need that assistance on the website, it would tell me, I would want to reach out to you guys first, and then you would work with me on services that I need.
Correct. The thing that we'd like everybody to do is call our office. What makes us really unique from most other places that do kind of what we do is that every person that works in our office is either a parent of a child with a disability or an individual themselves with a disability. So we've walked the walk, we know the talk, we know where the loopholes are, we know how to navigate the systems the quickest, we know where the roadblocks are going to be, the red flags to look out for. So we usually, if they call us first, we can prepare them for, this is where you're going to have a problem, but don't worry about it. It's going to take maybe an extra day or two to get through this system, or you're not going to go this way, we're going to have you go this way because it's a lot quicker, because we've known through experience that this is the way you want to go. We know a lot of the key people in these offices, so we have relationships with them to where we can help speed up processes sometimes if it's a critical process.
Yeah, that's great that you offer that service, because like you said, I mean, you can be a parent never having been involved in a disability. Now you've got a child, and I mean, you're not going to know what to do. Yet you've got the child, and so it's great that you guys offer that service.
Yeah, I mean, nobody in our office came out of school and said one day I'm going to be a disability advocate. We were kind of all thrown into that when our own children, became, either was born with a disability or we later found out they had a disability.
Mary, they're wrapping me up. Again, thank you for what you guys do. Happy holidays to you. Love to have you come back on the show from time to time and give us updates on how you're doing. You've been watching Across Louisiana. My name is Steve Sawyer. Happy holidays to you and your family, and thank you so much for being a part of the show, and we'll see you next time.